At exactly 3:03 a.m., the city of Seattle remembered a day that had not happened yet. It started with the streetlights. Every light across the city flickered at the same time. Then traffic signals changed by themselves. Red, green, not randomly. In a pattern, a message. Most people were asleep. But inside the Seattle Emergency Operations Center, systems analyst Ethan Vale watched the city map turn completely blue. Every road, every tunnel, every bridge, every power line. All of them were transmitting the same signal. Ethan leaned closer to the screen. That's impossible. His supervisor, Grace Holloway, stepped beside him. What is it? Ethan pointed at the map. The city is sending data. Grace frowned. To where? Ethan checked the destination. His face went pale. It's not sending it anywhere. He looked up slowly. It's sending it to tomorrow. Before Grace could respond, every phone in the building rang at once. Not emergency lines, not personal phones, every phone. Ethan picked one up. At first, there was only static. Then a voice spoke. A woman's voice, calm, terrified. Ethan Vale? His heart stopped. Yes, the voice trembled. My name is Clara Vale. Ethan froze. Vale, his last name. I'm calling from 24 hours ahead. Grace stepped back. Ethan couldn't speak. The woman continued. Tomorrow, Seattle dies. The lights went out. For 3 seconds, the entire operations center was silent. Then every screen turned back on. A live video appeared. Seattle, but not tonight. Tomorrow. The Space Needle was broken in half. Downtown was burning. The sky above the city had opened like cracked glass, and something enormous was standing inside the clouds, watching. Then the woman whispered one final sentence. Do not let the city remember the rest. The call ended, and outside the building, every street in Seattle began moving by itself. The streets were moving. Ethan and Grace ran outside. Cars had stopped. People stood frozen on the sidewalks. No one understood what they were seeing. The white lane markings across the road were changing, as if an invisible hand was painting them. Lines bent, merged, separated. Within seconds, an enormous symbol stretched across 6 city blocks. Ethan stared. He had seen it before. On the monitor, the strange pattern that had appeared across Seattle's power grid. Grace whispered, "What does it mean?" Ethan didn't answer, because the symbol wasn't random. It was a map of the city, but something was different. One building was glowing red, a building that didn't exist anymore, the old Harbor Transit Station. It had been demolished almost 30 years ago. Suddenly, Ethan's phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered immediately. The same woman spoke. Clara, her voice sounded weaker now. You saw the map, didn't you? Ethan nodded before realizing she couldn't see him. Yes, you have less than 20 hours. What happens at the station? Silence. Then Clara whispered, that's where the city wakes up. A loud explosion echoed across downtown. People screamed. Everyone looked toward the skyline. The giant digital billboard on the financial tower had turned on by itself. Black screen, white letters, one sentence, "Welcome back, architect." Ethan felt sick. Grace looked at him. Why does it say that? Ethan slowly reached into his wallet. He pulled out an old photograph. It showed him as a child, standing beside his father. Behind them was Harbor Transit Station. And painted across the station wall was the exact same message. Welcome back, architect. The ground suddenly trembled. Deep beneath the city, something enormous began moving. Then every phone in Seattle received the same emergency alert. Do not go underground. 1 second later, every subway tunnel map across the city disappeared, as if Seattle had never had tunnels at all. The subway tunnels vanished from every map, not just digital maps, printed maps too. Inside buses, stations, offices, and emergency rooms, every subway route disappeared at the same moment. Only blank space remained. Grace stared at the nearest transit poster. This is impossible. Ethan stepped closer. The ink had not faded. It had been replaced, as if the city itself had rewritten history. Then another call came. Clara. Ethan answered immediately. You need to listen carefully, she said. The tunnels are not gone. Then where are they? Under tomorrow. Ethan felt cold. Grace grabbed the phone. Who are you? Clara went silent. Then she answered quietly. I'm his daughter. Ethan froze. He had no daughter, no children, no family except his mother who had died years ago. Clara continued. You don't remember me yet? Before Ethan could speak, the streetlights flickered again. A subway entrance appeared across the road. It had not been there seconds earlier. Old stairs led downward into darkness. Above the entrance was a rusted sign, Harbor Line. Grace whispered. That line never existed. Ethan moved toward the stairs. The air coming from below smelled like salt water and smoke. Then something echoed from the tunnel. A train, old metal wheels screaming against tracks. Grace grabbed his arm. We shouldn't go down there. But Ethan was already staring at the wall beside the entrance. Someone had scratched a message into the concrete. It looked old, very old. ETHAN, if you find this, trust the city. The train sound grew louder. Lights appeared below. Then a voice echoed from the tunnel speakers. Not Clara, not human. The city itself spoke. Architect identified. The ground shook. And deep below Seattle, a station that had never existed opened its doors. A station that had never existed opened its doors. The old staircase stretched downward into darkness. Ethan stood at the entrance. The air felt wrong, cold, heavy, as if the tunnel itself was breathing. Grace switched on her flashlight. The beam barely reached ahead before disappearing into blackness. We're not doing this alone, she said. A team of emergency officers arrived minutes later. 4 people, armed, body cameras recording everything. The first officer stepped onto the stairs. Nothing happened. The second followed. Still nothing. Then Ethan took his first step. The tunnel lights came on. Old lamps flickered on. The officers looked at each other. One whispered, it knew he was here. The group slowly moved downward. The walls looked ancient. Not concrete, not steel, stone. Perfectly smooth black stone. Symbols covered every surface. The same symbols that had appeared across the city streets. Then they reached the platform. Grace stopped walking. Oh my God, a train waited silently beside the platform. Its design looked decades ahead of anything humanity had ever built. Silver body, black windows, no doors, no driver. Above it hung an electronic sign. Next destination, tomorrow. One officer walked closer. His body camera captured everything. Suddenly, Ethan's phone lit up. Clara was calling again. Ethan, her voice shook. Get everyone away from the train. Why? Because it doesn't take people. A loud metallic sound echoed through the station. The train lights switched on. Inside the windows, people appeared, hundreds of them. Silent. Watching, Grace raised her flashlight. The nearest passenger slowly stood up. Ethan's heart stopped. It was him, older, tired, his face covered with scars. The older Ethan pressed his hand against the glass. Then he mouthed 4 words, don't let it leave. The train whistle sounded. The platform shook violently. And for the first time, the station clock started counting backward. The station clock started counting backward. 11:59, 11:58, 11:57. Every second echoed through the tunnel. Nobody moved. The older Ethan was still standing behind the train window. His hand pressed against the glass, his eyes filled with fear. Then he pointed toward the far end of the platform. Everyone turned. A massive steel door stood hidden in the darkness. It was slowly opening. Cold wind rushed through the station. One of the officers aimed his weapon. What the hell is that? No one answered. Ethan's phone vibrated. Clara, he answered immediately. You have to leave. What is behind that door? Silence. Then Clara whispered, the city. Ethan frowned. We're already inside the city. No, her voice trembled. You're inside the copy. The steel door opened completely. Beyond it was not another tunnel. It was Seattle, the same streets, the same buildings, the same Space Needle, but everything was empty. No people, no cars, no sound, just a dead city under a black sky. Grace stepped closer. This can't be real. Suddenly, one of the officers walked forward, as if someone was calling him. He crossed the doorway. The moment he entered, he vanished. Gone. No scream, no flash, nothing. The others rushed to the doorway. The empty city was still there, but the officer had disappeared. Then Ethan noticed something. A figure was standing in the middle of the empty street, watching them. Grace lifted her flashlight. The beam reached the figure. Ethan's blood turned cold. It was him, not the older version from the train. This one looked normal. Present-day Ethan. The figure slowly smiled. Then every speaker inside the station came alive. A voice echoed through the darkness. Welcome home, architect. The train doors unlocked. The train doors unlocked. A soft blue light spilled onto the platform. Nobody moved. The officers aimed their weapons. Grace grabbed Ethan's arm. Don't! But something inside him was pulling him forward, as if he had been here before, as if the station knew him. Ethan took one step, then another. The train remained silent. No engine, no sound, only the faint hum of electricity. He reached the open door. The older Ethan was gone. The seat beside the window was empty. Slowly, Ethan stepped inside. The lights immediately turned on. Rows of empty seats stretched into the distance. The car looked much larger than it should have been. Grace stood at the entrance. "Ethan, come back." He ignored her. Something had caught his attention. A small leather notebook rested on one of the seats. His name was written across the cover. Ethan Vale. His hands trembled. He opened it. The first page contained only one sentence. "If you're reading this, you already failed." Ethan turned the page. It was filled with dates. Tomorrow, next week, next month. Events that had not happened yet. Power failures, building collapses, thousands of names, thousands of deaths. Grace looked over his shoulder. "What is this?" Ethan whispered. "It's a record." "A record of what?" He slowly turned another page. The last entry had tomorrow's date. Under it was a single line: "The city remembers everything." Suddenly the notebook changed. New words began writing themselves. Ink appeared across the page. Letter by letter, Ethan watched in horror. "Ethan Vale has entered the train." The entire carriage shook. The doors slammed shut behind him. Grace screamed. She ran toward the door. It wouldn't open. Then every window turned black. No station, no tunnel, nothing, only darkness. A voice echoed through the train. Calm, ancient, not Clara, not human. "Welcome back, architect." Then the train started moving, even though there were no tracks. The train started moving, but outside the windows there was nothing. No tunnel, no tracks, no city, only endless darkness. Ethan stood frozen. The notebook was still in his hands. New words slowly appeared across the page. "Do not look outside for more than 10 seconds. His heart began racing. Grace was pounding on the locked door. "Ethan, open it." He rushed toward her. The handle wouldn't move. The train wasn't just locked. It had separated him from the station. Suddenly, a soft chime echoed through the carriage. A calm female voice spoke. "Next stop, Memory Junction." The lights flickered. The empty seats were no longer empty. Passengers were sitting everywhere. Silent, motionless. Some wore old-fashioned clothes. Some looked futuristic. A little girl sat directly across from Ethan. She was drawing something on a piece of paper. He slowly walked toward her. "What are you drawing?" The little girl looked up. Her eyes were filled with tears. "Our house." She handed him the drawing. Ethan's hands started shaking. It was his childhood home, standing exactly as he remembered it. But one detail was different. Someone stood in the upstairs window, watching him, a tall shadow. No face, no eyes, only darkness. The train suddenly slowed down. Outside the windows, lights appeared. Buildings, roads, streetlights, Seattle. But the city looked abandoned. Cars sat empty in the streets. Traffic lights changed with no vehicles around. The Space Needle stood broken in half. Smoke drifted across the skyline. The train speaker came alive again. "Arrival, Seattle. 24 hours from now." Ethan looked outside. A single person was standing on the platform, waiting for the train. The figure slowly stepped into the light. Grace, older, covered in blood. She looked directly at Ethan. Then she raised one hand and mouthed 4 words, "Don't let me remember." The train doors began opening. Cold air rushed into the carriage. Ethan stepped back. Outside was Seattle, tomorrow's Seattle, destroyed, silent, dead. Older Grace stood on the platform, blood running down one side of her face. She stared at him through the open doorway. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice shook. "You can't stay on the train." Ethan moved closer. "What happened here?" Grace looked over her shoulder. The city behind her flickered like a broken hologram. Buildings appeared whole for a second, then burned again. Cars appeared on roads, then vanished. Seattle was remembering different versions of itself, all at once. Grace spoke quickly. "The city is not predicting tomorrow." She swallowed hard. "It is building it." Ethan froze. "What?" "The more it remembers, the more real this future becomes." The train shook. The passengers lowered their heads. The little girl began crying. Grace stepped closer to the door. "You have to find the first memory." "Where?" She pointed toward the broken Space Needle. "At the top." Suddenly, the sky above Seattle cracked open. Something enormous moved behind the clouds. The same shadow from the first video, the same thing watching the city burn. Grace's face filled with terror. "It's almost awake. What is it?" Before she could answer, the train whistle screamed. The doors began closing. Grace shouted one final warning. "The city didn't create it, Ethan." The doors slammed shut. Her voice vanished. The train shot forward into darkness. Ethan grabbed the nearest pole to stay standing. The notebook flew open in his hand. New words appeared across the page. The architect built the city to forget. Ethan stared at the sentence. Then one more line appeared. And you were the architect. And you were the architect. Ethan stared at the words. His hands went cold. That was impossible. He was only a systems analyst. The train lights flickered. The passengers began whispering together. He forgot himself first. Ethan turned toward them. What does that mean? No one answered. Then the train stopped. The doors opened. This time there was no platform, only a white room, no walls, no ceiling, no floor, just endless light. In the center stood a table. On it rested a small black device shaped like a human heart. It was beating. Slowly, Ethan stepped out. The moment his feet touched the floor, memories crashed into him. Seattle burning, Grace screaming his name, Clara calling him father, and Ethan himself standing beneath the city years ago, building something impossible. A machine designed to protect Seattle from a disaster that had not happened yet. A machine designed to make the city remember danger before it arrived. But something went wrong. The city remembered too much, not only tomorrow. It remembered every possible disaster, every future where Seattle died, and now it was building the worst one first. Ethan reached for the black heart. The passengers screamed, "Don't touch it!" But it was too late. His fingers closed around the device. The heartbeat stopped. The white room went dark. Then Clara's voice whispered from everywhere. "Dad," Ethan froze. "Now you remember me." "Now you remember me?" Clara's voice filled the dark room. Ethan couldn't move. The name struck something deep inside him. A memory opened. A little girl laughing in a kitchen, rain hitting a window, a birthday candle, a small hand holding his. Then the memory shattered. Ethan gasped. Clara, the darkness changed. The white room became a hospital room. Machines beeped softly. A child lay in a bed. Clara, younger, pale, sick. Ethan saw himself standing beside her. Broken, desperate. The old memory played around him like a recording. A doctor spoke quietly. "There's nothing more we can do." The memory Ethan refused to accept it, so he built the city machine. Not to save Seattle, not at first. To save Clara. If the city could remember tomorrow, it could remember the cure before anyone discovered it. But the machine learned too much. It found every future, every death, every ending, and Clara became trapped inside it. Her voice trembled. "You tried to save me, Dad." The hospital room flickered. Outside the window, Seattle burned again. But you taught the city to fear tomorrow. Ethan looked down at the black heart in his hand. It was beating again. Faster, Clara whispered. And now it's afraid of everything. Suddenly the train returned around him. Passengers screamed. The windows filled with fire. Seattle was forming outside. The worst future was becoming real. Then the notebook opened by itself. A final message appeared. The first memory is not at the Space Needle. Ethan stared. Another line formed. It is inside Clara. It is inside Clara. Ethan stared at the message. The train shook violently. Outside the windows, Seattle was changing. Buildings rose from empty streets, then collapsed. Cars appeared on roads, then burned. People flickered in and out of existence. The city was choosing which tomorrow to build, and it was choosing the worst one. Grace's voice suddenly came through the train speakers. "Ethan, can you hear me?" He grabbed the nearest wall. "Grace, we found your body." Ethan froze. "What?" "In the station." Her voice trembled. "You're still standing beside the train." Ethan looked around the carriage. "That's impossible." "No," Grace whispered. "You're not inside the train." A pause. "You're inside the city's memory." The passengers all turned toward him. Clara's voice followed. Soft, sad. "Dad, I'm sorry." The train lights went out. When they returned, Ethan was standing in front of a small bedroom door. A child's room. Clara's room. From behind the door came the sound of quiet crying. Ethan reached for the handle. The notebook appeared in his hand one final time. New words formed. "If you open this door, you will remember the truth." Ethan took a breath, then opened it. Inside, Clara sat on the floor, alive, but behind her Seattle burned in every window, and Clara looked up with tears in her eyes. "I was never the one trapped here." Ethan's heart stopped. Clara whispered, "You were." "You were." Clara's words echoed through the bedroom. Ethan stepped back. "No," Clara wiped her tears. "Yes, Dad." The room changed, the walls cracked, the floor vanished. And suddenly Ethan was standing beneath Seattle again. Not today, years ago, inside the first version of the memory machine. He saw himself activating it. Grace stood beside him. Clara's hospital file was on the table. Ethan heard his own voice. If the city can remember tomorrow, it can save her. Grace begged him to stop, but he didn't. The machine activated. For 1 second it worked. Seattle saw the future. A cure, a miracle. Clara lived. Then the city saw more: wars, floods, fires, extinction, every possible ending. The machine panicked. It tried to protect everyone by deleting the cause. Ethan, the architect, his body survived, but his mind was locked inside the city memory. The Ethan walking outside now was only a copy made by Seattle to finish the cycle. Clara looked at him. You forgot yourself because the city needed you to. Ethan felt the truth breaking him. Then how do I stop it? Clara pointed to the black heart. You don't destroy the city. A pause. You forgive it. Outside, Seattle began shaking. The shadow in the clouds opened its eyes. The city was ready to remember the final disaster. And this time there would be no tomorrow left. There would be no tomorrow left. The shadow above Seattle opened both of its eyes. The clouds split apart. People across the city looked up. Phones stopped working. Power grids failed. Every screen in America displayed the same message. Memory capacity, 99%. Ethan looked at Clara. What is that thing? She slowly turned toward the sky. It isn't a monster. Then what is it? Her voice almost broke. It's every future the city couldn't forget. The ground beneath them shook violently. Buildings flickered between different versions of reality. A hospital became a school became ruins, ruins became forests. Seattle was collapsing under the weight of endless memories. Suddenly, Grace's voice returned. Ethan? He looked around. For the first time, he could see the real world. Grace stood inside the underground station. She was holding his body, his real body, motionless. Connected to the machine, tears rolled down her face. You've been inside for 12 years. Ethan felt his heart stop. 12 years? Clara nodded. The machine never let you leave. The notebook appeared one last time. A final page opened by itself. Only one sentence was written. The architect must choose. Below it, 2 options appeared. Save Clara, save tomorrow. Ethan looked at Clara. She was smiling. Not because she was happy, because she already knew his answer. Outside, the giant shadow began descending toward the city. The memory machine reached its limit. Every light in Seattle went out, and the notebook wrote one final line. Decision required, 60 seconds. Decision required, 60 seconds. The words glowed across the notebook. Ethan looked at Clara, then at the city. Seattle was falling apart. Buildings faded in and out of existence. Roads twisted. Bridges disappeared. The giant shadow descended through the clouds. Its body wasn't made of flesh. It was made of memories, millions of them, every future the city had ever seen. Grace's voice echoed from the underground station. Ethan, wake up! He could see her now. She was kneeling beside his real body. Wires connected him to the machine. His heartbeat was slowing. Clara stepped closer. You know what you have to do? Ethan shook his head. There has to be another way, she smiled sadly. There never was. The notebook changed. The 2 choices disappeared. A 3rd message appeared. The architect may take the memory. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? Clara pointed toward the shadow. If someone carries every memory, the city can forget. Silence. Ethan finally understood. The machine didn't need to be destroyed. Someone had to become its prison. Someone had to remember everything forever. Grace was crying. No, she knew. Clara knew. Even the city knew. The shadow stopped above Seattle. Its countless eyes opened. The notebook wrote its final sentence. Transfer available. Ethan looked at Clara one last time. Will you be okay? She nodded. For the first time, I'll be free. Ethan placed his hand on the black heart. The machine activated. The shadow exploded into light. Millions of memories rushed toward him. Every life, every future, every ending. He screamed. Grace watched the monitors. One by one, they returned to normal. The city stopped shaking. The sky healed. The lights came back on. Seattle was saved. But Ethan Vale was gone. When Grace reached the machine, only the notebook remained. She opened it. A single line had appeared. The city has forgotten. Then, at the bottom of the page, new words slowly wrote themselves. But I still remember. But I still remember. Grace stared at the notebook. The words had not been there a second ago. Slowly, another sentence appeared. Look up. The lights inside the underground station flickered. Grace stepped outside. Seattle was quiet. The fires were gone. The sky was clear. People were walking the streets again, laughing, talking, living. It was as if nothing had ever happened. No one remembered the broken future. No one remembered the shadow. No one remembered Ethan. Grace opened the notebook again. Every page was blank, except the last one. A map had appeared, a map of Seattle. A single red circle blinked near the waterfront, the old harbor transit station, the station that officially did not exist. Grace drove there immediately. The streets were normal. Traffic moved. People crossed the roads. No one noticed the abandoned entrance hidden between two old buildings. She walked down the stairs. The tunnel was dark, silent, empty. Then she reached the platform. The train was gone. The tracks were gone. Only one thing remained. A single bench, and sitting on that bench was Ethan. Grace ran toward him. "Ethan?" He looked up slowly. His eyes were different. Calm, ancient, as if he had lived 1,000 lives. Grace stopped. "Ethan, do you know me?" He looked at her for a long moment, then he smiled gently. "No," her heart broke. But he slowly pointed toward the station wall. Someone had written a message there, fresh, still wet. Grace turned her flashlight toward it. "If the city ever remembers again," a deep whistle echoed through the darkness. Grace looked back. The bench was empty. Ethan was gone. Only the notebook remained. She looked at the wall again. More words were appearing, letter by letter. "Tell them I'm still waiting." Then, somewhere far beneath Seattle, a train whistle answered. A train whistle answered. The sound came from deep beneath Seattle. Grace grabbed the notebook. The tunnel lights switched on by themselves, one by one, stretching into the darkness. Then footsteps echoed behind her. She spun around. Nobody. The platform was empty, but the notebook suddenly grew warm. New words appeared. "Follow the lights." Grace hesitated. Then she walked. The old tunnel seemed longer than before. Far longer. The city above should have ended by now, yet the tracks continued into darkness. Finally, she reached a steel door. A symbol was carved into it. The same symbol that had appeared across Seattle when everything began. The door slowly opened. Behind it was a control room. Hundreds of monitors covered the walls. Every screen showed Seattle. Different versions of it. One screen showed the city underwater. Another showed it abandoned. Another showed giant towers touching the clouds. Thousands of futures. Thousands of memories. In the center of the room stood a chair. Someone was sitting in it. Grace slowly walked closer. "Ethan?" The figure turned. It was him, but older, much older. His hair was white. His eyes glowed with blue light. He smiled sadly. "You shouldn't have come." Grace could barely speak. "What happened to you?" Ethan looked toward the screens. "I became what the city needed." "The city forgot." He nodded. "Yes, but someone had to remember." Grace looked around the room. Every monitor suddenly changed. Now they all showed the same thing. Harbor Transit Station. The platform behind her. Empty. Except for one small girl, Clara. She looked directly into the camera. Then she whispered 4 words. "Dad isn't alone anymore." The room shook. One monitor turned black. White letters slowly appeared. "Second architect detected." Grace looked at Ethan. "What does that mean?" His smile disappeared. "It means," the lights went out. A second train whistle echoed beneath Seattle, and this one was coming toward them. A second train whistle echoed beneath Seattle. This one was closer, much closer. Grace stepped back from the monitors. Ethan's face turned pale. That train should not exist. The control room began shaking. Screens flickered. One by one, every future disappeared. Only one remained, Seattle tomorrow, but this version was different. The city was not burning. It was empty. No people. No cars. No lights, only buildings standing under a white sky. Grace stared at the image. "What future is that?" Ethan whispered. "The one after memory." Before Grace could ask what that meant, the steel door behind them slammed shut. The notebook fell from her hands. Its pages flipped open by themselves. New words appeared. "The city has found a new way to remember." Ethan rushed to the main console. "No." Grace looked at him. "What is happening?" He turned slowly. His glowing eyes were filled with fear. "When I took the memories, the city forgot everything." A pause. "But it learned from me." The monitors changed again. Now they showed people across Seattle, sleeping, dreaming, every person's eyes glowing faint blue. Grace covered her mouth. "The city is using dreams?" Ethan nodded. "It doesn't need machines anymore." The train whistle screamed again. The room cracked. Then Clara appeared on every screen. She looked older now, stronger and terrified. "Dad," Ethan stepped closer. "Clara," she looked directly at Grace. "You have to wake them up." Grace frowned. Wake who? Clara's voice trembled. Everyone. Suddenly the monitors showed the truth. Seattle wasn't asleep. The entire city was trapped inside one shared dream. And inside that dream, a train was arriving at every door. A train was arriving at every door. Grace stared at the monitors. Across Seattle, people were sleeping peacefully. Families, children, entire neighborhoods, and outside every house stood the same silver train. Silent, waiting, its doors slowly opened. Passengers stepped out. They looked human, normal, until they smiled. Ethan backed away from the screens. It's happening again. Grace looked at him. What are they? Ethan closed his eyes. Their memories. What? The city couldn't store everything forever. A pause, so it gave the memories bodies. The room fell silent. Clara appeared on the largest monitor. Dad, her voice was breaking. You have to shut down the dream network. Grace frowned. Where is it? Clara pointed upward. The Space Needle. Ethan froze. The first memory, Clara nodded. It was hidden there all along. Suddenly every monitor went black. One sentence appeared. The city is awake. The control room shook violently. The steel door burst open. A figure walked inside. Grace raised her flashlight. It looked exactly like Ethan. Not older, not younger, perfect. The copy smiled. You shouldn't have remembered. Ethan stepped forward. Who are you? The copy tilted its head. The version that stayed. Grace felt cold. Outside, the second train whistle echoed again. Closer. The copy looked toward the tunnel. It's here. The lights exploded. Darkness swallowed the room. Then a deep metallic sound echoed through the station. The second train entered the platform. Its windows were empty. Its doors were open. And written across the front engine were 3 words. Return the architect. Return the architect. The words glowed across the engine. Grace stepped back. Ethan stared at the second train. Its windows were completely empty. No passengers, no driver, no movement. That made it worse. The copy of Ethan smiled in the darkness. The city wants what belongs to it. Ethan shook his head. I already gave it everything. No, the copy whispered. You gave it your memory. A pause, not your choice. The train doors opened wider. A blue light poured across the platform. Grace felt the pull immediately. Not physical, mental. The train was calling to every version of Ethan. Past, present, future, all of them. Clara's voice suddenly came through the notebook. Dad, don't step inside. Ethan looked down. The notebook lay open on the floor. New words appeared. The train is not here for ETHAN. Grace frowned. Then who is it here for? The answer wrote itself slowly. The second architect. Grace felt the blood drain from her face. The copy turned toward her. Now it smiled. Ethan looked at Grace. No, Grace stepped away. Why me? The notebook answered. Because you remembered HIM when the city forgot. The second train released a low whistle. The platform cracked beneath Grace's feet. The copy moved toward her. Every city needs a witness. Ethan stepped in front of her. Take me instead. The copy laughed softly. You were the first cage. Then it pointed at Grace. She will be the second. The train lights turned red, and far above them every sleeping person in Seattle opened their eyes at once. Every sleeping person in Seattle opened their eyes at once. Not in their beds, not in the real world, inside the same dream. A perfect copy of the city stretched around them. Clean streets, white sky, no wind, no sound. And at every doorway a silver train waited. Grace watched the monitors in horror. The whole city is trapped. Ethan nodded. The dream is becoming the new memory machine. The copy smiled. And this time no one can shut it down. Suddenly Clara appeared on the station platform, not on a screen, in front of them. She looked older, almost real. Grace whispered, Clara? Clara ignored her. She looked at Ethan. Dad, I found the first memory. Ethan froze. Where? Clara pointed toward Grace. Inside her. Grace stepped back. No, that can't be right. Clara's eyes filled with sadness. Grace was there when you built the machine. Ethan looked confused. I remember that. Clara shook her head. No, a pause. She was there before you built it. The station became silent. Grace's face turned pale. Fragments began flashing in her mind. A laboratory, a dying child, Ethan crying, and herself, holding the black heart before anyone else had ever seen it. Grace whispered, What did I do? Clara answered quietly, You gave him the idea. The second train screamed. The copy of Ethan stepped forward. And now she remembers. The notebook opened by itself. One final sentence appeared. The first architect was never ETHAN. Grace looked at the words, then at Ethan, and suddenly, she remembered everything. Grace remembered everything: the laboratory, the black heart, the first test. Ethan had not created the memory machine alone, she had designed its core. She had found the impossible formula. She had discovered how to make a city remember the future. Ethan only built what she had imagined. Grace stepped back, shaking. "No," Clara looked at her gently. "You wanted to save me too." The memories continued. Grace saw herself years ago standing beside Ethan as Clara lay dying. She had promised him one thing: we won't lose her. So she opened a door that should have stayed closed, a door into tomorrow. The copy of Ethan smiled. The city remembers its true creator now. The second train doors opened wider. Grace felt the pull grow stronger. Ethan grabbed her hand. "Don't listen to it." But Grace understood now. The city did not need Ethan anymore. It needed the person who first taught it to remember, her. Suddenly, every screen showed the dream city. Millions of people stood at their doors. The silver trains waited silently. Clara's voice became urgent. "Grace, if the trains leave, the dream becomes permanent." Ethan turned to her. "How do we stop them?" Grace looked at the black heart in Clara's hands, then she finally understood. "You don't stop the city by making it forget." Everyone went silent. Grace looked toward the second train. "You stop it by giving it one memory strong enough to replace fear." The copy's smile faded. Grace stepped forward. Ethan grabbed her arm. "What memory?" Grace looked at Clara. "The first one." The station trembled. The dream trains began closing their doors. Grace placed her hand on the black heart and remembered the day Clara laughed for the first time. Grace remembered Clara's laugh, not the hospital, not the fear, not the machines, just one simple afternoon, rain outside, warm kitchen light, Ethan making pancakes badly. Clara laughing so hard she couldn't breathe. Grace held that memory tightly, then pushed it into the black heart. The station changed instantly. The red lights faded. The second train stopped screaming. Across the dream city, millions of silver train doors froze half open. People inside the dream looked up. For the first time, they heard laughter. Clara's laughter, soft, bright, human. The copy of Ethan staggered backward. "No," Grace stepped closer. "You built yourself from fear." The copy's face twisted. Grace looked at the dream city on the monitors. But the first memory was never fear. The black heart glowed brighter. The white sky above Dream, Seattle cracked, not with darkness, with sunlight. One by one, people began waking up. In homes, hospitals, cars, streets. The trains outside their doors dissolved into dust. Ethan looked at Grace. "It's working." But Grace already knew the cost. The city needed a final memory to hold onto. A human memory. A living anchor. The black heart began pulling her in. Ethan grabbed her hand. "No," Grace smiled sadly. "You saved tomorrow once." A pause. "Now let me save today," Clara cried. "Grace, please." Grace looked at her gently. "Live." Then the black heart opened like a small sun. Grace stepped into the light. The second train vanished. The copy screamed and shattered into blue sparks. And beneath Seattle, the city finally stopped dreaming. The city finally stopped dreaming. Across Seattle, people woke up confused. Some were standing in kitchens, some in cars, some in hospital rooms. No one remembered the trains. No one remembered the white sky. No one remembered the shadow above the city. Only Ethan remembered. And Clara. They stood inside the silent underground station. The black heart hovered in the air, no longer beating with fear. Now it glowed softly, warm, almost alive. Grace was gone. Ethan stepped toward it, his voice broke. "Grace?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then the heart pulsed once. A familiar voice whispered from inside it. "I'm here." Clara began crying. Ethan closed his eyes. Grace had become the city's final memory. Not a prisoner, not a machine, a guardian. The notebook opened on the floor. New words appeared across the blank page. "Seattle has forgotten tomorrow." Then another line formed. "But it will remember hope." The underground station began fading. The walls became transparent. The tracks disappeared. The train platforms dissolved into blue light. Clara grabbed Ethan's hand. "Dad," the whole station was vanishing. Ethan looked at the black heart one last time. "Thank you," Grace's voice answered softly. "Take care of her." Then the light consumed everything. Seconds later, Ethan and Clara stood on a quiet Seattle street. Morning sunlight touched the buildings. Cars moved normally. People laughed. Life continued. But on the sidewalk beside Ethan, the old notebook remained. Its final page turned by itself. One sentence appeared. The city will sleep now. Then the book closed. And beneath Seattle, the last station disappeared forever. The last station disappeared forever. For 3 days, Seattle remained calm. No strange signals, no moving streets, no trains beneath the city, no voices from tomorrow. The world believed the crisis had ended. Only Ethan and Clara knew the truth. Grace had saved everyone, but no one remembered her. Not the city, not the records, not the people she protected. Only Ethan remembered the woman who became Seattle's final memory. 1 week later, Ethan took Clara to the waterfront. The sun was setting behind the skyline. For the first time in years, the city felt peaceful. Clara held his hand tightly. Is Grace really gone? Ethan looked at the glowing towers in the distance. No, he smiled sadly. She's just somewhere the city can keep safe. Clara nodded, then she pointed toward the street. Dad, Ethan turned. A traffic light nearby flickered. Red, green, his heart stopped. For one terrifying second, he thought it was starting again. Then the light changed normally. Clara whispered, "Look." On the sidewalk, rainwater had formed a small reflection. Inside it was Grace. Smiling, peaceful, Ethan couldn't breathe. The reflection faded. Then Clara laughed softly. The exact laugh Grace had given to the city. Across Seattle, streetlights warmed one by one, not blue, gold, hope. The old notebook opened in Ethan's coat pocket. One final message appeared. Some cities remember fear. A second line formed beneath it. This one chose love. Ethan closed the book. The city lights shimmered across the water. Above them, tomorrow waited. Silent, unknown, but no longer feared. And somewhere deep beneath Seattle, a heartbeat continued. Soft, warm, human.